Now if your wheel has a center cap, go ahead and use your pry tool. I'm going to go ahead and pop off that center section. Using a 19mm socket, we're going to go ahead and remove our lug nuts. Now go ahead and grab your wheel, remove that, and set it aside. Now if you have drum brakes here, you may have this little star on here holding the drum onto the axle. If you do not have these little retainer stars, it's not the end of the world. You can go ahead and simply remove these and discard them. You can use a pair of pliers or cutters. Now our brake drum is stuck in place, so we're going to go ahead and use a hammer and we're going to strike around the edge of the drum to try and loosen this up. Just using our pry bar, we're gently walking the drum off. And one in the rear here, we're going to go ahead and remove our differential cover using a 13mm socket. We're going to go ahead and remove the 2 bolts securing our brake line, move that up out of the way, and then we're going to continue removing these bolts. This does have differential or gear oil in it. You want to have a catch can underneath to catch what is going to come out. Let's get to remove the rest of these bolts. Now what we're going to do is leave this top center bolt in. We're just going to have it loose. That way, once we pop this last bolt and we open it up, this bolt will hold the cover and will slowly let the fluid drain out. Now I already have some differential oil coming out here. We're going to go ahead and try and open up this cover. You can use a pry tool. I'm using a chisel here just to try and pop this open. I'm going to remove our last bolt up top. Grab the sides of our cover here. Now when you remove your differential cover, there's going to be a gasket that is here. Go ahead and clean up the material that is here. Use a razor blade if you want to go ahead and clean up the chunks that are there. I want to go ahead and use our tool here to clean our old gasket off. Now inside of our differential, we have our axle shafts that come through these two tubes on either side. We want to go ahead and remove the passenger side axle. In order to do so, we need to be able to go ahead and rotate this whole carrier unit so that we can get access to this pin that's up on top. Now if you rotate just one wheel, you're just going to see the spider gears moving inside here. So what we're going to do is you want to go ahead and grab a partner, have them grab the other wheel on the driver's side as well as the wheel on the passenger side and rotate them in the same direction so you can get this whole carrier unit to rotate around and get access to this pin up on the top. Okay, so this is the pin that we want to take out. It's a bolt that goes through and actually locks into the center pin right here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to break this loose first, and then we're going to rotate this back up a little bit because once we remove this bolt and this pin, those gears that we've seen inside the carrier unit here will want to fall out. So you want to go ahead and make sure that they don't go all over the place. We want to kind of keep them in place while we work on this. Now using a 5/16 wrench, we're going to go ahead and loosen this pin. And what this pin does is it locks this pin into place. So this is basically a bolt that has a pin end on it that goes into this here. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this to a certain point where we can get this out all the way. I'm going to go ahead and rotate our carrier unit so that this bolt is able to come out, and we're able to sneak it by this cap and this bolt right here. There's our bolt or pin. Now we're going to rotate this down a little bit to about right there. We want to make sure we can still get this pin out, and we're going to watch for these gears. Even if these gears fall out, it's not the end of the world. We can still go ahead and get them up into position with a little bit of work. Let's push this pin down like so. Slide this out. You can see that's where the pin goes into. So I want to make sure when we reassemble this, that goes in the same position. Now on the inside here, we have our spider gears right here. And if you watch, you might be able to see that little axle shaft bumping in and out right there. What we're going to do is we want to go ahead and push our axle inward. And I don't know if you heard that, there's a little bit of a click. We're going to use our magnet. And we're going to release a C-clip that goes into a notch inside the axle shaft right here. Now it's safe to go ahead and pull our axle out because that C-clip is what holds it into the carrier unit here with our spider gears. Now watch the axle. As we pull the axle out from the brake side, you'll watch this axle go inside the tube. So go ahead and grab that axle, and we're going to slide this out. Here is the end right here that had that C-clip in it. Next, we want to go ahead and remove our axle seal right here. You can do this one of two ways. You can use a pry bar and just get up underneath the lip of it. I'm going to go ahead and pop this up, but you want to be careful so that the corners of your pry bar don't gouge the axle tube itself where this is set into. Your other option is to use the bearing puller, put that in, and pull the bearing with the seal out at the same time. If you just want to replace the seal, you're going to want to do it like this. Let's go ahead and clean up around here. And we're going to use our slide tool here to go ahead and pull this bearing out. So now we have our slide puller ready to pull that bearing out. We snugged up this nut here. Let's go ahead and pull that bearing out. Now what we want to do is go ahead and clean up the inside of your axle tube. You want to do inspections in here for any type of scoring or burrs or any type of issues that would be inside here. You also want to make sure when that bearing came out that it has some sort of resistance. If the bearing did not have any resistance and just fell out, you may want to consider looking at another type of kit that would help restore the inside for the correct bearing fitment. Our inside here for the bearing looks really good. Let's go ahead and inspect the axle. Let's go ahead and inspect our axle. We're going to check the splines here. Going to give us a quick spray. Do a visual inspection. Make sure there's no damage to the splines. Everything looks good. Ours looks good. So let's go ahead and check the side where the bearing goes. This end down here. I'm going to go ahead and spray this down and clean it up. What we're looking for down here is any type of scoring or burrs, any type of marks that would cause or that may have been caused by a defective bearing. Run your finger back and forth, see if you can feel anything. Ours is nice and smooth. So we can go ahead and reuse this axle. I want to go ahead and clean our differential cover here. I want to make sure we get all of our old gasket material off of the perimeter and clean all that up. Use a gasket scraper or whatever you have to go ahead and clean this. We're going to use our gear oil. Make sure you have the correct oil that is recommended for that differential that you're working on. Want to make sure that this bearing is coated. If you want to, you can put this in a bowl or something, fill that with the gear oil. Let's go ahead and get ready to install that. I'm going to take a little bit of that gear oil, line it on the inside here where that bearing is going to go. Get our bearing lined up into place like that. Let's go ahead and use our bearing driver and tap this in. Now there is a lip on the inside. You will feel when that bearing stops going in. You can feel it and hear that that bearing has now bottomed out. Use some gear oil, put it around the perimeter here. Let's go ahead and pop this in. I'm going to put some gear oil on the inside of our seal. I'm going to put some on our axle shaft right where the bearing is going to be riding on, as well as the seal. Let's go ahead and line this up and slide this in. Now you want to support that axle as it goes in. Work that in. As we push this in, the axle is going to come through the spider gears inside the differential. We want to get everything lined up in there. Continue to work our axle in. The axle should come out through the inside. We can see our notch right there. Go ahead and take your C-clip. We're going to line this up, pop that on. You're going to hold it there and pull the axle out. That will lock that C-clip in place. Next, you want to take your pin here. I want to slide that up inside. This pin should go up. Once that lines up, go ahead and take your pin. I'm going to get ready to install that. We're going to put some blue Loctite on those threads before we install it. I'm going to work our pin in. We had to rotate our carrier unit a little bit to get that to line up. Now that our pin is in and our bolt pin is in, let's go ahead and thread that down. I'm going to tighten that up. With that Loctite on there, let's go ahead and snug that up. You want to go ahead and clean our area here where our differential cover is going to be sealed to. I'm just using some solvent on a rag. Want to do the same thing with our differential cover. Make sure that is very, very clean before we install that. Now, if you have a gasket for your rear differential cover, you can go ahead and use that. We're simply going to use some oil-resistant RTV to make our own gasket. We're going to go all the way around the perimeter, and then we're going to level this out and let it set for about 5 to 10 minutes. Now we're just going to level this out. Just want to be a thin coating around. And once this is leveled out, we're going to let it set so it tacks up. Let's go ahead and install our rear differential cover. Go ahead and line this up. Then we can go ahead and start installing our bolts. We're going to get all the bolts started by hand. I'm going to come on back and snug those down. Let's go ahead and snug these down. Now you want to let this set up for about a half hour. Once you install this, that way there, the RTV will cure and seal that up. Now on the outside of the differential, there is a plug right here. We're going to use our 3/8 drive extension. We're going to put that in there. We're going to use our electric impact to go ahead and loosen and remove this plug. We use our short 3/8 extension and our ratchet here. We're going to go ahead and loosen this a little bit. And go ahead and remove that plug. Is we're going to take our gear oil and our bottle, and I cut off the tip of it here. And I put a little rubber hose on there. And what we're going to do is feed this into the differential. Flip this upside down, and we're going to fill the differential with our gear oil. What we're going to do is we're going to fill this here until the gear oil just starts to come out at the bottom of this threaded hole here. And you definitely want to use the specified, or you want to use the manufacturer specified gear oil for this differential. Now we're now starting our second quart. Okay, we're at the point there where our diff fluid is coming out of the hole there. We can go ahead and put our plug in. Go ahead and snug that plug in. Make sure it's in there nice and tight. Then you can go ahead and use your solvent and clean up the residual gear oil here. And we'll go ahead and install our drum. Let's go ahead and install our wheel here. I'm going to start all of the lug nuts by hand. And then we'll go ahead and snug those down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 95 foot-pounds. Once we have those tightened down, I want to go ahead and take your center cap, line these up with the lug nuts, and pop that into place.